Hi, everyone. Welcome to VidCon now. I am Gwen Miller. I am Vice President of Content at Kin, which is a digital women's lifestyle company. I am a digital video content strategist who specializes in working with creatives to craft their ideas into videos that will perform the best across platforms. I really became passionate about this part of the business early on in our industry because for a long time, it seemed like we were all really obsessed with optimization. What tags are we all using? Like, what words exactly are we putting in the title? Which was very important, still to a certain extent is important, but it's really just a small portion of the creative. If you ask any YouTube employee, walk up to any of them, ask them, what is the secret to the algorithm? They will invariably answer that it's make great content, make better content, make good content, which seems like the biggest cop-out of all cop-outs. It really seems very unhelpful, but it really does get to the core of what they've been trying to do over the past 10 years. Now, they don't always get it right, but what they're trying to do is increase audience satisfaction with the platform. They've learned a lot of stuff along the way. For example, you really need to tack on the words long-term audience satisfaction to that, because it turns out, strangely enough, that short-term audience satisfaction does not necessarily translate into return viewership for the long haul. But the point here is, if their intent is to reward content that increases this audience satisfaction, that increases user retention over the long haul, it really does behoove us to figure out exactly what in our content does exactly that. And fortunately for all of us here, YouTube and now Facebook to a certain extent, they're getting a lot better, really does provide the tools and the data that let us know exactly when our content is doing just that. Now, some of the data is going to be very specific to your unique one-of-a-kind audience. Every audience is different. They're going to react, and they're going to get the satisfaction from different content than a totally other unique audience would. However, there's a lot of things that over the many years I've spent in this industry, I found are remarkably consistent across all the channels I've worked on. And in past presentations, I have definitely brought a lot of these up. It's usually in the form of, hey guys, you won't believe what I've discovered. This is really cool, let's geek out. But this is really the first time I decided to do really a unified presentation where we're gonna walk through from the beginning to the middle to the end, all the things that really make for content that really grabs people's attention and keeps them. Obviously, we only have 30 minutes here, so we're not going to go over everything, but I'm putting some of the really good stuff in here that will definitely get you started. This is kind of similar to how in film school, they'll teach you how to structure a film script with the exact right beats to really have this emotional payload delivered at the exact right time. This is kind of my poor man's digital version of that. You know, at the end of the day, we're all storytelling, whether you're doing a nonfiction video on YouTube or you're doing a script. It's just the mechanics are slightly different about what works in each place and how you really deliver that emotional, satisfaction. All right, so let's jump right into it. We don't have a lot of time. Let's start with the intros. Now, guys, there is a chat window somewhere. This is a great place. You can just start throwing in questions in there while we're going. And then at the end, we do have time reserved for a Q&A session, and we'll start to dig into that. And then also at the end of that, I will also be on Discord for a while answering questions. So you can also ask me some questions there. All right, so let's start with the basics. For the love of God, please do not put up a logo first. Certainly, you should not put up your show logo first. Please, God, do not put up your corporate logo first. So what you need to be thinking here is you don't want anything that comes up the first thing to be something visually repetitive across your videos. It gives just a half second for your audience to be really thinking of, oh wait, have I seen this video before? I'm not sure. That's all it takes for them to decide it's not worth the time to figure it out, and they will bam. The other thing to keep in mind is that you really don't want anything between your audience and the content that's going to convince them to stay. So what is that? It's really it's a cold open. Do a freaking cold open. And for those who don't know what a cold open is, this is either, this literally be, I'm going to tell you what this video is about. Obviously in a very high energy way, that's very engaging. Or if it's pretty obvious from the title, or just people know this type of format on YouTube or Facebook, you may do something different, like a really high octane smash cut of exciting moments from your video, or funny moments or bloopers with really high energy music underneath it. And just something that's going to get them to say, I want to stay and watch this video. For the love of God, don't give me 15 seconds of slow Siri footage with slow music. Or this one is my pet peeve, is we often like to borrow this TV trope into digital, for those of us who moved from TV into producing digital, which is, oh, maybe you're running a family channel and you've invited a child psychologist to teach your talent the correct way to parent. So you open up, long shot of the sidewalk, they're walking down the sidewalk, they walk up to the door, they knock on the door, the talent opens the door, hey, how are you? I'm so glad you came. This means nothing. This doesn't tell me if the child psychologist knows what they're doing, if they're interesting, if I'm going to like the parents. Like, it does not tell me anything. It just gives me time to be like, I'm bored, I'm going to leave. So, what I'm trying to get at here is, do not dither. Your audio should start right away. Like, typically that's going to be your dialogue. The first frame, you should be hearing audio. If obviously if you're doing a smash cut, you're not going to have dialogue, in which case just make it really high octane music. But you need to get them pulled in from the first second. Don't give them time to think. All right, so do, however, make the intro very visually appealing. This is important for YouTube, but it's most important for Facebook. So remember, Facebook is still a feed-driven platform. It's still a platform that you encounter most things by scrolling, and things are auto-playing without the sound on. So you want to give them something that's going to convince them to hit the unmute button. I always say that programming for Facebook is programming for babies. You just think about it, very colorful. Things are moving, big expression-filled faces. That's how you get people to hit that unmute button. And this doesn't hurt for YouTube either. Obviously, they've already made that choice by hitting the thumbnail and clicking through, but they can still leave at any second. Now, before you react and you're like, oh, look, I'm making content for adults. I'm not making content for children. I don't either. My current channel focus on women 25 plus. It's practically an ancient age group on YouTube. And even so, I use these rules. Obviously, it's not going to be the same manic level you might have in a kid show, but even so, we dress our talent in colorful colors. I make sure that they keep their energy up. I make sure that they're being expressive with their faces. Whatever is right for your audience, use this rule and apply to it. All right, so now we have a really great intro. I'm bought in. I want to watch the rest of this video. Now you can do your branding. And this could be just over the talent's shoulder. They keep talking, keep the video moving. But if you really do feel that your show really needs more of a brand to it, with some sort of musical hook to remind people that this is a certain show, you can do that at this point. But it needs to be brief. It needs to be up for 5 to 7 seconds. We do not have time for TV-length intros. TV-length intros were there in the first place for people who are running late to their 8 o'clock show, needed that little extra time to grab the popcorn and sit down. We don't need that in digital. And any second that ticks by is a second that they can decide to leave. Really key here, guys. I want you to listen to this one because I've seen it go wrong so many times. This is the place for your show logo. This is not the place for your corporate logo. Your corporate logo needs to go at the end of the video. No corporate logos here. This should be branding for your actual video. All right. We have limited time. So let's get right into the body of the episode. All right. So let's start with my first rule, which is made to be broken, which is one thought equals one video. This is one of those classic rules that you can break and it's made to be broken, but You need to learn it first, and you need to learn the psychological reasons that we have this rule, so you know how you can break it, when you can break it, and when you just need to really stick to the letter of the law here. But if you do it, there's a lot of successful channels who do break this on a regular basis. But let's talk a little bit about why it's really important to understand this concept. At the most top basic level, we all know, first thing we learn when we get into making digital video, especially for YouTube, Facebook is a little less important in your title because you're not really encountering the title that often. But on YouTube, you really need to be very careful about fulfilling the promise of the title when you click through. And the more specific the title, the more clickable the title is. So let's do some examples. All right, my top moments of the week. All right, I don't know who you are. Maybe, what if you're a boring person? Maybe the top moments aren't that interesting. All right, my most embarrassing moments. Better. I like to see people embarrassed. I might like to watch that. We'll see. But the best of all, story time. I accidentally left my brother at a truck stop. That is something that I'm going to click on and I am going to watch. So it helps when you're one thought, one video, because you're able to craft these really specific titles that still fulfill the promise of the title, but come up with some very interesting content within. All right. The second level down is you switch thoughts, you risk bifurcating your audience. And this only really applies for thoughts that are really aimed at different audiences. And you need to be really careful. So this comes back to, if we, in my channel level presentations, we'll talk about one channel needs to be one audience. Especially in a single video, you better be aiming at the same audience. So let's just use a really extreme example, just so it's really clear. You probably don't want to do a video that's half a, hardcore home renovation show and half where they're playing, I don't know, Minecraft or something. There's probably some people who love home reno who are also big Minecraft players, but your top of your funnel is going from here to like here. It's really going to bring down the amount of people who are going to want to watch that. And what happens? The hardcore rental people come in, they watch, they get to the part about the Minecraft, and they're like, ooh, not for me, they leave. The Minecraft people come in, they see this home rental crap, and they're like, what am I doing here? And you have this just a mess of a retention graph that makes YouTube be like, ooh, something is really bad with this video. They're like crushing people's souls in this video. Look at that drop off. We're never going to show this to anyone again. So make sure your videos have this single audience, and having a single thought is a great way to aim at the audience, or as we'll get into later, at least match your thoughts to your audience. All right. So let's really talk about the major reason, though, that I'm very big on this rule. Switching thoughts really does equal an exit opportunity. Anytime you come out of that lean-in experience is an opportunity to be like, geez, I have other stuff I should be doing. Maybe I should go do that. And why is that? That's because every thought equals its own little story arc. So every thought has a beginning, a middle, and end. The beginning pulls people in. The middle you stay for because you need that resolution. You need to see how that thought completes. And then that conclusion gives you that feeling of fulfillment that we humans need, that feeling of satisfaction. 5-10 minutes left in this video, I might be like, oh, geez, I have other stuff to do. Like, I'm feeling really content right now. Now's the time to get out before I feel sucked back in. So you just have to be really, really careful, because this will happen. People will leave. Let's do another extreme example of this. You probably wouldn't want to do the first half of your video beauty tutorial, the second half of your video a Q&A. Your beauty tutorial would have this great start. We're going to do this look. You have the middle, you doing it, and then you fulfill people's expectations with this great full face of makeup. As soon as they see that full face of makeup, they might be like, I have other things to do, even though we know that when they click out, they'll watch another 45 minutes of YouTube. It doesn't matter. They're just feeling like, oh, I feel good about this. I don't know if I want to risk going on with the video. All right. So that's the reasons why we can't have this one thought equals one video rule. Now, what are the workarounds to this? Well, you can stitch it all together. So you can take those multiple thoughts, you can make them into one thought. I'm going to emphasize again, you need to make sure the thoughts are aligned to a single audience, but if they are, you can kind of take those two thoughts, put them parallel to each other, and move them through the beginning, middle, and end stages together, so that by the time you reach the end, they're coming to conclusion together. Let's take our video tutorial Q&A example. You would never want to do that, half the video one, half the video the other. But one of my favorite formats right now on YouTube is the format of beauty gurus inviting other beauty gurus on to each other's channels, doing each other's makeup and doing Q&As while they do it. It's really fun, really interesting. You get to hear things about their lives and they're chatting. You feel like you're hanging out with them doing makeup. And they're doing the makeup routine, and when you hit the end, you have the final climactic question while they're finishing up the face, and then it kind of all comes together at the same time. This is very similar to what you might see in a lot of ensemble TV shows, say like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like you have half the crew doing one thing, half the crew doing another thing. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine writers don't do the first half of the show be one half of the crew doing something, and then do the second half and the second part of the show. That's 2 episodes. Those are 2 15-minute episodes. That's not a single unified show. What they do is they go back and forth between them. The end, you have both storylines resolved. That's what we're trying to do here. All right. The thing here is you're going to have to be careful with your titles because that can get a little tricky when you have a muddied multiple of formats. But if you can figure it out, this workaround works really, really well. All right. The second workaround, keep it moving. There are some formats, there's always going to be natural beats. You can't get away with it. Let's go back to the Q&A example. A Q&A in a lot of ways is, say, it's a 15 question Q&A. Each question is essentially its own thought. There's really no way to get around that. So the secret here is you keep things moving to a pace where by the time they realize the last thought is over, they're already invested in your new thought. And how do you do this? You keep the energy up. I always say, you need to have 20% higher energy than you think you do because the camera sucks away 20% of your energy. Also, what you can do to help that in the edit is pull off the dead air. Now, not so much that you start clipping words, but you'll be surprised how natural it can feel when you have almost no dead air. I'm not suggesting you cut your videos like a Jake Paul episode. Remember, I also work with a more mature audience, and I found that this works really well and still feels really natural. We license a lot of stuff to TV, and it works perfectly. So, highly suggested. In the same vein, you need to be very careful of transitions. The reason for this is the last thing you want, if you're concerned with people leaving at a change of thought, is to introduce any sort of audio or visual cue that essentially trains them to think about leaving. The very worst of this is the swoosh pan. The swoosh pan is my least favorite thing in the world. This is like the universal sound effect for things are changing. Like, people hear that, they immediately think change of thought, and they leave. We see this all the time in our data if we try to use swoosh pan. I would just suggest you never do it. In fact, the only really time I say to use very noticeable visual transitions is if you don't use it, it's going to result in a very awkward, really kind of painful, jarring transition, in which case then use it, but just don't use it predictably. Don't use it every time, only use it when you need it. All right. My favorite part, storytelling. Storytelling in video. And again, I know we're not doing scripted most of us, but even if you're not, everything has storytelling, everything has an arc, everything has emotional beats. So let's talk about that emotional story arc. This is really, really important. This is one of the things in the last couple of years I've been doing a lot of research into because I think it's pretty cool. Because it's not just that A, B, and C work in your videos. It turns out A, B, and C have to happen in a certain order. Your emotional story arc has to build to a climax. And that emotional climax better happen at the end of your video. If it happens in the middle of your video, you have a problem. Again, let's use the most extreme example. Okay, maybe not the most extreme example, but crying is kind of one of the heights of emotions we tend to show on video. Now, crying is great. If you can get your talent to cry, do it. I mean, don't beat them up or, fake it or anything. But if they happen to cry, you've got something gold there. The problem that we found is if they cry in the middle of the video, you'll see this huge spike in your retention. People will lean in and be like, oh my God, this is so interesting. The unfortunate part is if you still have 10 minutes left in your video and they're done crying and they're moving on and maybe they've resolved it and now they're doing their regular scheduled programming, even if the program is great, even if it's something that otherwise would have done really, really well, because they have reached the emotional climax already. Anything after that feels like let down. And there is a very predictable dip right after. and it's very strong and it's very deep. We tried many ways around it, but mostly it's unavoidable. You cry too early in the video, you're going to see a retention dip, and it can affect your standing in the algorithm. So a couple of things that we do to try to get around this. First of all, if you can plan for it in pre-production, do. So if you're structuring your video for your talent and you can tell that there are things in this video that might make them emotional, try to put those at the end of the video. Now, sometimes it doesn't always work. I have done Q&As where question number 3 out of 15 seems very benign and they're bawling in question 3. Of course, the easy solution to that, and this is step 2 if you can't plan for it in pre-production, rearrange and post. If it's a Q&A, it's easy. You just pull up that question, you move it to the end. Sometimes you got to get more clever about how you do it. Sometimes you got to kill your babies, unfortunately. If you have 5 minutes left in a 17-minute video and minute 12 they cry, what can we get rid of in that last 5 minutes to get us to the ending as fast as possible? What here could I move off into some sort of super fan club, things like that? Kill your babies. Of course, you can't always do that. Sometimes there's story points that are not going to make sense if they're not in there, and that's fine. I just want you to be aware of your potential problems when you do that and try to make the best decisions you can about crafting that emotional story arc. All right, storytelling. Tell actual stories constantly. I know this also seems like a kind of a dull one, but this is actually one of the things that I find really separates a lot of successful creators from unsuccessful creators. They're telling stories all the time, and they don't have to be big, explosive stories. They just have to be well told, and that's being descriptive. The sights, the smells, the sounds, feeling like you're there with them, and they're showing intimate parts of your life. And this is really no matter what type of video you're doing, how-to, especially how-to. You know how oversaturated the how-to space is on YouTube? Literally any topic you can think of, there is 100,000 gazillion other videos already waiting to come up in YouTube search for that. What do you add to this? You add your personality, you add your story, you add this enticement to the audience to hit that subscribe button because they want to come back and see more of you. So you're no longer a prisoner to the cycle of the YouTube SEO algorithm. All right, here is my big one about storytelling. A story is worth 1,000 morals. And why is this? Like, it's just human nature. We love hearing a story, especially when it's trying to teach us something. We don't want to be preached at. We want to be told stories. Every single talent to a T will come up to me when we're starting to work together and be like, I just want to share the things I've learned to help make other people's lives better, which is very admirable, something I love. But what that can turn into is a 15-minute video of platitudes. And we have all heard the platitudes before. I've been told a million times that I should be more self-confident. That is not necessarily going to mean that you saying it for the 10 millionth once time is going to help. But you know what does help is me hearing your story about how you were not confident. What was your life like? What was the thing that caused you to realize I'm going to be more confident? What was your life like after? That's going to get through to people a lot better. They will share their stories back than having 10 minutes of platitudes. How do you say things freshly? How do you make it personal? Tell the story. And then this is very important. Do not tell the story and then spend 5 minutes afterwards talking about the moral. A, people are smarter than you think. They're going to get the moral. B, you can mix that into the story. As you're talking about, talk about how these were the thoughts I felt. And this is how I learned X. But what you don't want to do, remember, 2 thoughts? There's nothing more at 2 thoughts than a great story, 5 minutes of just talking. Because as soon as the climax of that story happens, everyone's gone. No one's going to stay for your last 5 minutes. Your video gets sucked down in the vortex of Never Never Land of the algorithm, and it's never seen again. Tell stories over and over again. All right, let's move on to world building. And this is simply, what's the world I'm trying to build for my audience? Is it, look at these crazy stunts? Then for all means, get yourself a drone, show these big, beautiful wide shots of what you're doing, revel in it. But if you're doing other type of content, that is, looking for that sense of intimacy. It's just you and me hanging out together. Maybe it's not a great idea to have that drone shot for a video where you share your story of struggling with endometriosis. Talk about something that communicates to your audience. We're exposed. I'm feeling exposed. It's not a situation where you want to share deep things with each other. So you just really need to beware of looking overly produced if your idea is to be really, really intimate. So in that same endometriosis video, you probably would not want to pull back and show that there was a crew there. Other situations, it works really great. You're doing a comedy video. It can be really great to have the crew laughing in the background. It's the same principle as a laugh track. People like to laugh together. In that case, involve more people. When it's something that's intimate, involve less people. Beware of other TV tropes. We talked about the whole walking up to someone's front door, knocking on it, having fake conversations. People are smart, and the audience is smart. They recognize when something feels too TV. They will call you out for it in the content and the comments, and they will have a big issue with it, and you'll hear it very vocally. And the same thing, if you're working with talent who's ever been a news host, who has ever done red carpet, they tend to fall into this very TV host-like pattern, which we as an audience are conditioned to hear as fake and inauthentic, and they will not do well on the platform. Same way. Feel free to show mistakes. You're not doing a Food Network show here. You're doing an online video show. You can show the mistakes. It makes it feel more natural. It gets people's radar off the whole thing of, ooh, is this overly produced? Is this fake? Now, the audience is smart, but they're not professional production people. So you can sneak in really great production value in there. You just have to do it in the right place. The audio is a great place. Like, they can't hear that that's great equipment or a great crew. They just know it sounds really, really good. Same thing with great picture quality. If it looks beautiful, people will aesthetically react to it, but they're not going to see that and be like, oh, that was expensive. Like, this is so not authentic. All right, remember to involve the audience. We're making digital here. We're not making TV. This is our one superpower. Let's use it. Remember, the audience should always be involved. They should always be in the room with you. So a big pet peeve is, you and I are talking to each other. This is what a YouTube video should feel like. You're looking deep into each other's eyes. What if we're talking together and suddenly I start, can everybody see my PowerPoint? If I will keep talking until I figure out where my PowerPoint went. If we were talking together like this, what if I suddenly started walking this way? And you're keeping talking, and I'm talking to the side of your face. That would be really weird. It feels very awkward. It feels very much like we're no longer talking to each other. You're like staring at me in a zoo. That's what it feels like when you switch to a side angle in an online video. Do not do it. We want to feel like we're talking to each other. Now, I know a lot of the reason that we do this is because we're afraid of the jump cut. A, do not be afraid of the jump cut. It's great. But B, if you like us, like to license things to TV, you may have to be afraid of the jump cut. In that case, what you can do is shoot in 4K. Shoot in 4K, deliver in 1080, works just fine for YouTube and Facebook, and just punch in and out, right? So you're avoiding that jump cut, but you're still maintaining that great eye contact. We used to faux this with two 1080 cams, like really stacked on top of each other. But the problem there is your eye lines just aren't quite the same, and that's really annoying. I don't like it. All right, give me 3 seconds. I'm getting my PowerPoint back. Hopefully someone will shout out once they can see it. Otherwise, I'll just toss at you. And afterwards, you can email me for the presentation. All right, reloading the site. While we're doing that, let's talk a little bit about some things that I have really found with our talent that they can struggle with. They actually find it pretty easy to get the whole thing of staring into the camera. I will say it does take them a little while. It can feel really awkward just to stare at a camera. But they get that pretty quickly. The time when I find that they tend to fall off on this is when there's a guest. And I'm not saying like their husband or their sister. If they're really in sync with someone, it'll be really easy, where they will sit next to each other and they'll talk to the camera like it's a friend. But as soon as a new guest comes into play, then you get the instinct, the psychology of a human to do friendship building. And how do you do that? You turn to each other and you stare deeply into each other's eyes. You mirror each other's movements. Well, that's great, except remember there's a third person in this room, which is the camera and the audience. And now they feel like that left out third wheel. So what I always tell talent is pretend you're sitting in a circle. And when you're sitting in a circle, what do? You point your legs to the center of that circle, and then you cheat your body to the different players in the room, always making sure that the person who might be quiet and not talking, you're still glancing at them while you talk so that they feel involved. That is one of the really great ways you can break them of that habit. All right, let's see if we can get back this PowerPoint here. Aha. Ta-da. All right, Fiona, you should have the PowerPoint. Aha! Success! Troubleshot. I didn't really stop talking too much. We will go back down to where I need to be. All right. So the body. Last thing we'll say about this is build your world with visuals and audio. Just remember, no matter what you're doing entertainment. I don't care if you're doing a how-to. I don't care if you're doing something that's pretty straightforward. You need to remember it's entertainment first. Even if you're creating the sense of intimacy and not things overproduced, you still need to have it look really great. You need to have visuals that are really, really addressed for the satisfaction of the audience more than even the how-to. Send them off to a recipe. It's fine. You can link them out. But while you're building the visual world, you might want to pause and lovingly do things like the sizzle of bacon, like that sound, the picture of it sizzling. Slow-mo that. Repeat it. Other things like blending, which can be kind of loud and annoying to people's ears, and we know it's boring to look at. You speed on that for a second. Speed on. Like, remember, first of all, you're doing entertainment. And then also, if you're doing any sort of content that tends to is a lot, let's just say it's a story time. You're sitting there and you're watching a person talk for a long period of time. What you're going to want to do is break that up with other visuals. Graphics are great. I know they take a lot of time, but they really, really do work. Even just simple emojis, popping them up. And again, I work with an old lady audience comparatively. Emojis still work every single time. I love them. Or you can flash back to a Insta story that you've done in the past. Anything to visually break it up. Make your content visually and auditorily appealing, and people will stay for it. All right, let's talk outros. End your video when it's over. I know it sounds like a truism, but we're all really terrible at it. We get to the end and we panic and we start to ramble. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making it. These words mean nothing. All they are a blocker for me to get from the end of the content to the end card where I get to make a choice to click on more of your content. So your main video is over when your topic is over. So it's a cooking video. You pull the lasagna out of the oven. As soon as you do the hero shot of that lasagna, people are starting to leave. Everything else that you want to do, you should have either done earlier in the video. So say you want to be like, you could take this lasagna to a potluck, to a picnic. Do that while you're putting on the noodles and the lasagna earlier. You say you want to taste the food, which in some cases doesn't really matter if it's a really good looking cake. They don't care if it's a good tasting cake. They just want to see the pretty hero shot. But if you really do want to taste food, do that thing under the end card. Have these videos up there you can cook on while you're going, tasting this food. So what you want to do is go straight from pulling that lasagna out to your ending audience participation CTA. So this could be like, put your favorite potluck recipe in the comments below. Then you do a subscription CTA and you are done. And this is where, if this was a video, I would be not happy. And why is that? You need to look out for ending words. You need to be very careful not to end your videos early. These words are like last, finally, almost done. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Even ending vocal tones. And this is problematic because people hear them, they psychologically think this video is over and they leave. Now, if this is the end of the video, it's not that big of a deal. But the words still don't help you. It's obvious it's the end of the video. Again, it's just one blocker from getting to the end card. Where these get really dangerous is if they come earlier in the video. So you're doing 10 favorite products. and you get to the last product and you say, this is my final favorite product. You probably have 2 to 3 minutes left in this video because you got to talk about the freaking product. People hear the word, you're going to see your retention, people are going to start to filter out. And you still have quite a bit of this video to go. YouTube's going to see that not so great ending retention. You don't get surface as high in the algorithm. This is such a strong correlation in the data. I've seen this happen as early as 5 minutes into a 15-minute video, where I had a challenge doing a skincare video with my favorite skincare products. Number 3 out of 15 products happened to be night cream. Like, this is the final thing that I put on my face before bed. That retention crushed. It was like, obviously there's more to this video, but it's so strong of a psychological trigger. It's like those transitions I was saying. It gets in people's head, they look up and be like, oh, I can leave. So be very, very careful about any of these things. So, as I said, we don't have time to go through everything. And I just want you guys to remember that really, there's a lot of things that are universal, which I always love chatting about and geeking out about, but there's a lot of things that are going to be unique to your one-of-a-kind audience. And you're going to start digging into your data, and YouTube and Facebook have a lot of great data. There's a lot that we could be doing an entire course on that, but really, they do give you great tools that are fairly intuitive. Get in there, start learning things about your audience. You're going to figure out how your audience views your talents. We have one talent whose audience is obsessed with her feet, and it's not creepy. It's like 90% women. It's just she has literally the cutest little feet you've ever seen. We do great with shoe hauls. You'll learn, we have one talent who's the girl next door, and we have to be really careful that she never comes off as entitled or boasting about the stuff she has. Her audience will jump on that in a second. We have another talent whose audience is like, you got a freaking elevator, you go, girl. So it's really particular to your very specific, very, very specific audience. I can't wait to hear what you find. I encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn, find me on Twitter. Let's chat about it. And in the lower left-hand corner, you'll also see my email. If you want the presentation, just drop me an email there and I will send you the link. I think we do have some time for a Q&A, and then afterwards, I will also be on Discord. So they sent me a list of questions. So, all right. Do tags matter in your YouTube videos? It matters less than it used to. You know, back in the day, YouTube really did need them to clue in the algorithm about what videos to associate your video with. Nowadays, the AI is really smart. They're going to figure out what your video is about really quickly and what specific audience it's going to be best for. But that said, there is still some theory that it is important in, say, the first 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't hurt. Put those in there. It can help the algorithm have a head start to know where they should be testing your video out to see if it's related. But I wouldn't kill yourself over it. It's not, again, you're going to have much better luck putting your time into looking at your data to figure out what in your content works over trying to figure out how to game the algorithm by putting it tags. YouTube's only goal in life is to make any gaming the algorithm impossible, except if you're just going to make content that some audience out there loves. How long should your intro to a video be? Your cold open can be like really, you can be as long as you want before you get to that logo. Most of the time, most people like to have their logo somewhere near the beginning. So our cold opens tend to be anywhere between 15 to 20 seconds. But if you have a really great open, there's no reason why it can't be longer. It's just the big thing is when you're doing actually the graphics package, and if it's going to be full screen, it needs to only be there for 5 to 7 seconds before you get into the meat of the video. But the longer, if you have some really great content, like the longer you show it before you break to show your graphic and logo, the better off you're probably going to be to keep people. What is your number one tip for captivating thumbnails? This is one which I deal with a lot of celebrities and celebrities who spend a lot of time on Instagram, and they like to control their image a lot. And my favorite thing to tell them is like, the thing that's going to make your image pop on this thumbnail is an open mouth. It can seem really weird. They're used to posing in very controlled smiles, but on YouTube, it's not Instagram. What you want is to show action and excitement and, oh my God, there's something happening in this video. That thumbnail is going to do a lot better than something where you're like, so that's what I'd say. Beyond everything else, you can talk about having contrasting colors, a lot of saturation, all the great things that work. But really, my favorite simple one is close-up of faces that are looking really, really interested in something that's happening in that video. If my channel is very educational, how can I best incorporate storytelling? This is one of the things I specialize in. Again, you might say I'm doing how-to. I'm doing I'm doing something about the science of X. I'm not sure if any of you listen to Radiolab. I think Radiolab does this the very best. They're literally teaching you hard science a lot of the time, but they do it through storytelling. And obviously, we're not all having a great band of journalists like Radiolab to really craft these things. But whatever you're doing, just remember, whatever you're teaching, how do I craft that into a story arc? Even if it's not like a personal story that I had to do with this topic. It could even be just structuring the information that you're imparting in the context of a story. It could be the story of how someone invented it or found it, or it could just be how you put it together to make sure there feels like there's a beginning to suck them in, a middle that puts in the meat of the content, but there should be something at the end that gives them that sense of satisfaction, right? That really gets them leaving being like, okay, I have learned something and I feel satisfied for learning it. Does music objectively make a video better for storytelling? I can go either way on this. It really depends on whether your talent needs it. I have certain talents who I'm literally having the editors pull down the music because it's just competing with them. Certain talent, it can help up the energy if they're just naturally low energy. So it's just kind of a cop-out answer, but it's really use your ear. Like, it's not something that's a rule that like I need to have music here. And a lot of the time when I notice music when I'm watching a video is when it's annoying, when it's too loud. So getting that balance right is really key. It can subconsciously help if you get the balance right, but be very, very careful with it. It can be a wee bit dangerous. What is the most surprising thing that YouTubers do that makes their videos underperform? I would have to say it goes back to that rambling at the end. Like, you would not imagine how many people just cannot figure out how to end a video. And then you get some people, like, if you watch a lot of the kids these days, the videos are just over. Like, it's like, and then things are done. And again, like, we're not going to make it quite that frenetic, but you'll see on some of our channels, you will see that we have activity and action right up to the end. If we have like more calm portions, because you don't always want 20 minutes of just freneticness, that'll be more towards the middle, and we'll find something to up the energy again at the end to keep people there. But we are the owl species very bad to know how to exit a conversation. I just exit the freaking conversation. Do you have what are some good ways to add calls to actions earlier in the video to not have them at the end? One of the good places to do is, so remember, you have your cold open, then you go into your graphics right before you leap back into the main part of your video. You can then be like, hey guys, do me a favor, don't forget to hit the subscription bell. That's a good place for it. I will tell you, you are going to see a little bit of ding on your retention at that point. And that's because these are universal ending words now. We have for so long conditioned people to expect those at the end. It will have some of the same psychological impact, but less so than when it's at the end. So you can, if you want to, do them both places. We do that on time for a lot of our videos, just to double the impact. It's always a give and trade, right? You just kind of figure out what you need to give up to get some of those more subscriptions. It can be worth the slight retention thing, but you will see a little bit of a ding if you do them earlier. Do you have any suggestions for holding attention for longer periods? I'm working on a one-thought video that's an hour long. Oh, I love this. So as we know, YouTube's in an arm race to longer and longer videos. When you tell an AI that all you care about in life is to have people watch for as long as possible, it's going to be only a matter of time before creators figure out how to make their videos longer. And it was like, at the beginning, it's like, you need 3-minute videos on YouTube back in the day. And it was like 5, 10. now we're up to 15, 20. And now I'm seeing people do great things with 30 to 40, 45 to hour-long videos. And I love it. I love seeing how people can live on the edge of what's acceptable on YouTube. I will say very quickly, though, that still for most people, it's that 19 minutes and 59 seconds is their limit. It hits over the 20, then they maybe think twice. So only do it longer than 20 minutes if you have such a compelling story that people are going to stay long-term in the video. But if you're doing this is really, really great. But you still need to keep the energy up, and that's where it gets difficult. You can't just like leave boring things in there because you want to make your video longer. But I've seen a lot of things where I'm like, I have so much great content, I could have a 45-minute video, which I would just be like this the entire time. If you have that, just make sure you're still cutting it tight, pulling out that dead air, keeping the energy up. Again, you can have these kind of, you don't have to always be manic high, but you've got to keep the interest throughout. And one of those big things is going to be that pacing and making sure that the visuals are varied enough. If it's like literally 40, for example, you just watched me for 45 minutes in this same shot talking to you, which is great. And that does not necessarily mean that you need to have a 45-minute video with 10 different scenes. But again, what are the visuals I can put up there? If this was a video, can I have some graphics popping up right here that add some visual interest to this? Can we have little like flashbacks to things from earlier episodes that are in jokes? Can I just feel like I'm not in the same place the entire time, even though I'm in the same place the whole time? Okay. I think, how much? 2:47. I am almost exactly on time for the first time, I think, ever in my presentation career. This has been a lot of fun. I'm super glad that I was able to be here. And look at that, what I did. I did exactly what I said. I do not know how to end this. So I will be hanging out on Discord. You want to come over and chat with me? It's great. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Hit me up on Twitter. Email me for the presentation. Thanks, guys.